So I don't even know the whole story behind the cigars.
The cigars.
Like even how you got them.
So Matt Fradd, his company was putting out. They put out a message calling for podcasters to submit applications to review the cigars on their podcast. Smart marketing. But so I submitted ours, and they chose ours. So they sent us 2 different cigars. So we have one of them is from G.K. Chesterton Company Cigars, and then the other is branded with Pints of Aquinas. So
they're both Matt Fradd's.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, both Matt Fradd. What's cool too is actually they sent when they sent it out, they gave
A sugar packet.
yeah, they gave us some sugar, which I think is really nice. Cigar sugar, it makes sense. No, they sent us a 2-way humidity control pack as well, so kept them nice and
good.
Humid. So, do you want to try the Pints with Aquinas one or the GK? It looks like the GK Chest one's a little lighter.
I'll do the dark. I usually go dark on things.
Okay.
Yeah, like stout beers and coffee and.
Well, that's good
that
because I
whole
go
thing.
light.
Oh, I love the branding too.
Yeah. Let's see. So if you can't see this, I'll talk about my the wrap on mine. It's just pretty sweet. So this is it's a navy blue strap here with gold silhouette of G.K. Chesterton, and it has his signature on here. He has the best signature. Have you ever seen his signature?
Mm-mm.
Look at his signature. That's real.
Oh, it's like whimsical almost,
Yeah.
like a fairy tale.
It's seriously like
That's
something you
pretty
see in
sweet.
Lord of the Rings.
That is really cool.
Awesome.
That's cool. Mine has the Byzantine Catholic vestments on it.
See that? Oh, that's awesome. Dude.
Felonia, or what's the cape called? Something like that.
Dude, A+ on the branding.
Yeah.
That's
really
great.
cool branding and not flaking off, right? So the little sugar packet helps, or the humidity.
Yeah.
Humidity help.
Smells good. So
Smells
it looks
really
like,
good.
okay, they sent us a little info sheet on each one too.
Cool.
So
Because we're not aficionados, but
No. We're usually pipe smokers. Yeah. But Pints of Aquinas, so they're both a Toro. And so the wrapper on yours is a Mexican San Andres.
okay.
The binder is from Nicaragua. And the filler, there's 4 different types of tobacco in there that I'm just not familiar with. So then the Chesterton one, the wrapper is Nicaragua, binder is Mexican, and then 4 different types. So they kind of flipped on the wrapper and binder. So that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go ahead and light these. I watched a YouTube video. Actually,
I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger take vodka or tequila. Was it tequila? And he rubs all his cigars in tequila.
Did you send that to me?
Maybe.
Somebody sent me that, I think.
I'm not going to do that to Matt Fradd's cigars, though.
No,
These look
no,
too
no,
good.
No. So let's go ahead and cut her. Or Qatar her.
Yeah, for the record, it's Qatar.
It's pronounced Qatar. Come on. I'm so tired of people saying cutter. I'm not doing it. Even if it's right, I'm not doing it. All right.
Here, you can do mine, too.
Thanks, Dan.
That looks like you did a really good job on that one.
Yeah, got all over my pants. All right, let's see. Get it nice and straight.
Maybe Matt can send us a new cutter.
You hear that? You hear that, Fred? Stevie could use a new guitar. Okay. So, gotta get all this tobacco off my pants. So I saw a YouTube video with longer matches. These were actually from that cigar shop in Vegas when we were there at that hotel. So these are actually preferred for lighting cigars, which is great. Oh. But the method that I saw was strike the match, let the head, burn off, tilt a little bit just to get a bigger flame, but never to light the cigar directly in the flame at first, but to just hover above the flame and turn the cigar to get an even burn, and then actually inhale and
cool.
Light her up. So we'll try that out.
We'll pretend like we're professionals.
Yeah, I think we're doing pretty good so far pretending. Hold that. Oh gosh, we're off to a bad start.
Whoa.
We're good. We're good.
Okay.
So, right above the flame. Wow. Actually does work.
Can't get mine to... There we are. So just hover.
Yeah, you just hover.
Let it happen.
Hover and turn. They call it the old hover and turn.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, it actually does give you a nice even light. I like it.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to have to light another one to actually inhale, though.
How am I doing?
I think you've done better.
Hmm. Oh, man. That's good.
Ooh.
A little spiciness, deep.
Real smooth.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have that... sometimes cigars be a little bit harsh, leave that nasty taste in your mouth. I'm not getting that at all. It's real smooth.
Yeah, really smokable.
That's a nice cigar, and you can't beat that wrap, dude. I mean, having G.K. Chesterton's face.
But again, we talk about culture, right? Catholic culture, and the culture of like creating really good things.
Yes.
Quality items, even down to the wrapper. So really fine job.
I love it. Now, G.K. always enjoyed a good cigar with a Bordeaux. So I went ahead and...
Oh, you didn't have to.
went ahead and got one for us. Because I feel like in order to get the full GK effect, you're really going to have to smoke it as he smoked it. And maybe after this, we'll write a really good book like he did.
I'm going to name it Everlasting Man.
All right. Let's give her a whirl. Cheers.
Cheers. Let's see if he was right.
Very good.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do feel like I can write a novel or something.
There you go. So, first, I just want to thank Matt Fred and the team over there at GK Cigars
thanks,
and Pints with Aquinas. And so, I just want to give them a shout out. So, just so you guys know, right now, due to high demand in store, they're not going to be fulfilling any online orders until August of this year. So, ordering online right now is basically just a pre-sale. And that's also noted on the online store as well. But you're going to want to order online as soon as possible because the cigars, they said, are actually going really fast. So if you want to order, go to ChestertonCigars.com. It's just one word, ChestertonCigars.com. And if you want to follow them on Instagram, it's at Chesterton_cigars. At Chesterton_cigars. And again, to order, ChestertonCigars.com. Really awesome. Like we said, great branding, great smell, super smooth, not too bitter and leaving a nasty aftertaste. It's really good.
And it brought us together, right? We don't often get together, so to have a chat over a cigar is a nice.
Exactly.
thing.
So if you want to smoke a good cigar, a good Catholic cigar, and listen to good Catholic content, buy one of these and then go to the Catholic Brothers podcast and subscribe to our channel. And especially go to our playlist, The First 500 Years, where we're walking through the first 500 years of Christian history. Right now, as we're making this episode, we're currently in the late 2nd century. Our next episode is going to be on Montanism. But be sure to enjoy a good cigar with our content. And thank you to Matt Fred again and the GK Cigars team. Now...
What shall we talk about?
So it's been a while since you and I have gotten together, of course. And I feel like the news cycle back in the day, it would take a year for momentous things to happen. But for some reason, in a matter of 9 weeks, we've had 2 wars. We had a new pope. You know that your cadence is a little off if you can say in between each episode there was a new pope elected. But What's new? What have you been up to?
Well, first the new pope. Yeah, that was surprising, obviously, because, well, surprising because we have a new pope, but surprising also because the pope was born in the United States, not just born in the United States and lived in the United States, but literally grew up 20 minutes from where we grew up.
Yeah.
And literally grew up 15 minutes from where I'm currently at on the south side of Chicago.
One of our childhood friends, actually, his uncle went to seminary with him.
Yeah, it's so odd. And it just has a different feel to it right off the bat.
Yeah.
You know, Chicago's all, they're loving it too, but in like kind of like a, weird way. Where they have like, where they have like Pope jerseys and people going to games with miters on and stuff, whatever, it's fine. But it's just weird because it's his background. You know the environment he grew up in. It was our environment.
Yeah.
So just to have a pope, not just from America, but like literally out of anywhere in the world, to have a pope, to have him from south side of Chicago, we were just across the border in Indiana, 15-20 minutes away from where he grew up. So that's pretty unique, I'd say.
That's pretty wild.
But yeah, I've been watching a lot of the Pope, listening to sermons, watching liturgies, all of that. I don't think it's healthy maybe for Catholics to always hang on every word of a pope, or to this gesture or that, but just historical interest in the Bishop of Rome over the last 2 months. It has been interesting to see, and I'm really, right off the bat, he was talking about AI. He was talking about, I think, what was cool about his first sermon to me. So he gathered with the cardinals, right away, in the Sistine Chapel for his first mass, and it was like refreshing, because he starts quoting Saint Ignatius of Antioch. And I'm like, wow, that is to dig that deep and far into the church's treasury and history, and all to bring up the point of, I'm now the Pope, yes, but I must decrease. That was like literally his first message.
Yeah.
Saint Ignatius, who we've talked about numerous times on the channel, tells the Roman Church, don't worry about my body. Let the beasts eat it and grind me up. It doesn't matter. You don't need to worry about it, kind of thing. And he interpreted that as, Saint Ignatius wanted to decrease and Christ increase. And those were Leo's first words to his fellow bishops and cardinals.
Yeah, for me, at first I was like, what's going on? Like, because everyone was like, pizza balla and all these different people. What if we got Syrah? And I was like, that's never going to happen. Yeah. But so I was like wondering what is going to step off on that balcony. And
what's like what creature? What creature's going to step out of the balcony?
And so then, like, not knowing at all who he was, and he stepped out, and I was like, what? And then I was like looking up things, and it was like very nebulous, and I was like, well,
we were in Vegas at the time for work, at the trade show, and I remember he texted me like, wait,
I was like, I don't know what this is, right? And so I had really a lot of trepidation at first, and then like you said, in the first interactions that he had as Pope with the world, it was so incredibly clear that regardless of what maybe his private opinions are on X, Y, or I don't know. I don't know the guy. I don't know what he thinks behind closed doors or anything like that. But what I care about the most is that when somebody takes on the chair of Peter, that they sense the gravity of the office, and that they are not going to bring their personality and their private judgments into the chair. And I sensed that right away with him. Like, even his first sermons, everything that he has said so far has been like, he feels totally inadequate, like, to be sitting in that chair. And that is the person
he was tearing up. Yes. He was tearing up on the loggia. Mm-hmm. And there's been moments in different liturgies where it kind of looks like he's tearing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been moving to watch.
Yeah. And I feel like
Victoria always says he looks like a grandpa, like Gramps.
Yeah.
just like a good demeanor, like down to earth demeanor. Mm-hmm. Not in a, I don't know.
He's not a pompous person at all. That's the thing. He doesn't have performative humility. He has actual humility. Like, performative humility, like, oh, I'm not going to wear the red shoes, I'm not going to wear this, I'm not going to do, I'm going to live here. It's like he's just like, no, I'm going to do all the things that the office calls me to do.
Which I think you can make the argument is more humble,
Of course,
to hide yourself within the papacy.
Yeah,
like doing the things that popes have always done. So Pope Francis, when he first, I remember I wrote a blog or whatever, when he was first elected, we weren't Catholic yet, but I saw it as a really cool, like, oh, he took the name Francis. We both have a devotion to St. Francis of Assisi, even before came back to the church. Francis always has this universal appeal. And so he names himself Francis. Okay, he's going to be a pope of the poor and marginalized, which that's true.
But also a pope of evangelism. Like that was, I think, like he's literally he's going to be focused on the gospel, then like Eucharistic devotion. Like he's just going to be a really like solid evangelistic person. Like that's what we're.
But when you look back, you think the name Francis is so different to the papacy that it's like an outlier, and he stands apart. Mm-hmm. Whereas, with Leo taking the name Leo, it's like he's hiding himself within the wider church, within the wider papacy. This isn't like Leo the Second or Leo the First. It's Leo the 14th. Right. Like Benedict the 16th. He's putting himself within the great magisterium and the great tradition throughout the centuries, and he hides himself in it and tucks away. And again, going back, decreases kind of in a way is how I'm reading it in one sense.
What I liked about him pretty much immediately is, like I said, the sensing the gravity of the office, number one. Number two, he seems to have, he's Augustinian and not a Jesuit. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge plus. But also, like with Leo the Great, who is a saint in both the autocephalous Eastern churches and the Western Church, like he is very much invested in the Eastern churches and bridging the schism. And so he has an actual devotion and understanding of the Eastern churches, which I really love. Like he understands their liturgy because he talks about it all the time now. I'm noticing he references their liturgy all the time, and he's very much about them keeping their liturgical integrity, which signals to you something like he must also think some of those things about Western liturgy.
Well, and I think it was obviously providential because this is the year of Nicaea, the 1700 year of anniversary of Nicaea, and the thought was, well, Pope Francis is going to go see Bartholomew at some point, right? And then Francis dies, and it all gets put off. Yeah. Oh, what's going to happen now? But it was like providential in the fact that when Leo was elected, very soon after, maybe the week after or 2 weeks after, was the Jubilee of the Eastern Catholic churches. Mm-hmm. And so you had all these Eastern Catholics in Rome around the time that Leo is being, enthroned or put in place, installed as the Bishop of Rome. So I think it was almost immediately on his mind. Yeah. And so I think I read recently that he is still planning to go to meet somewhere, maybe in Turkey, with Bartholomew. I'm not sure what the plans are, but I think they're committing to something together.
Yeah. So that was the third thing I liked about it. The fourth thing, like you mentioned already, was in the sense that he took the name Leo because he said that there's a new industrial revolution happening, just like Leo the 13th directly addressed with Rerum Novarum, like industrialization, capitalism, communism, and these scary things that are coming, and spoke prophetically in that moment. Like he senses that something is going on right now with the development of AI, and you and I have talked about this privately for like a few years now, where we're like, dude, this AI thing, like, it was so disheartening, honestly, under the last pontificate, where like, every week there was like a new statement about something that was very like navel gazing. It was just looking inside the church and finding little problems to fix and like rearranging the furniture on the Titanic kind of thing. And like, I don't know. Yeah.
It hit us particularly hard because we were a Tridentine parish. We were we had Tridentine Mass on Sundays, and so those, when Traditione Custodes came out, that immediately affected us, and we're like, well, that doesn't describe us. That doesn't describe us. Yeah. We're not divisive. We accept Vatican II. Like we're just getting along with our Catholic lives. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like the fact that like the goal of that pontificate was what? Like readmitting divorced and remarried, civilly divorced and remarried Catholics like to communion. Like that's the priority. And like what was the other priority? It was like giving homosexual couples blessings and cracking down the Latin Mass. And you're like, the world is literally creating AI. Like and like if ever there was something where like the church's voice was so clearly needed to direct culture, or at least to be a rock of offense, like an immovable something that they have to look at and say, oh, the Catholic Church is actually against this, just like abortion, just like euthanasia,
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of folks who don't like the encyclical kind of tradition that's grown up in the 20th, 21st century with the popes, but I think now that we're in an age where like the church really doesn't have much authority, it had much more authority 500, 600, 700 years ago, right? Yeah. Where it doesn't have much authority, I think it is appropriate to address the world with the church's moral stance on something.
Yeah.
Because we've said it before, in our opinion, if Peter goes down, everybody goes down.
Yeah.
If the Roman Church is the last bulwark, it's the last bastion of morality and faith and ethics and all of that. Not even the East, I think, can even claim moral superiority.
I would say even philosophy.
Yeah. Well, sure. All of that, and so if the ship's going down, we're going down with Peter. But I think it's appropriate for the church to continue to have a public voice when it comes to morality, morals, and ethics.
As long as the encyclicals are good. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
I mean, yeah, I think there's a danger in wanting only brevity and simplicity out of the papacy. There's a good thing to that, to want the Pope to just speak clearly with brevity and authority. That's a good impulse.
And limited.
But you would never want the Pope to only do that.
Right.
When the occasion calls for something else. But on the other hand, we have a world that is so the other direction, where it's never black and white, and it's just we're obsessed with nuance. I feel like the spirit of the academy has completely just infiltrated the ecclesiastical authorities. And so like they're obsessed with the nuances and the complicated situation that you're in, instead of speaking clearly. So I feel like there needs to be a healthy balance of like, if there are many words in the encyclical, the thesis of the encyclical better be very like to the point, direct, and black and white. Like this is what the church teaches, and then go on and do your thing. Whereas I feel like what we've had is sort of like, it was almost like somebody was just writing like a bunch of like thesis papers, and you're like, well, okay, but what's the conclusion to this? And I mean, that's why like bishop conferences, 20 something of them, like what was that one? Fiducia Supplicans. We're like, we can't implement. I mean, there's no way to implement. What do you want me to implement exactly? Yeah. Like, what are you saying? Right. That's just, I think it's abuse. I mean, it was abuse of the papal law. So I'm happy coming into this pontificate so far that seems to be the case. And I think there's something to the Augustinian like nature of him that
it's
that's
great.
Driving that.
Again, once again, like having somebody that's patristically minded, you can tell it because in almost every sermon that he gives, there's a quote from St. Augustine in there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think it's appropriate. We're talking about AI, and this is the question of the age right now is AI and its proper use, and the worker, and how it's going to relate to not just blue collar but also white collar and labor, like Rerum Novarum did. But it's great to have an Augustinian at the helm, because you think of St. Augustine in his age, he was the one who had to speak to his age. Yeah. Tempora Christiana, right? So all the Christians in the world are thinking, okay, the empire is now Christian, so this is it, right? As the gospel is going to continue to spread, we're going to have success, all of that, and then all of a sudden, 410, the sack of Rome, and the empire is vulnerable, and people all over the empire are shaken and crying, and Jerome's shaken by it and all, and then Augustine sits down to write the City of God, right? So I think St. Augustine spoke to that age. I think Leo could be that person to speak to this age.
Well, especially
really
if he's going to take seriously like the Augustinian anthropology that starts off the confessions, Lord, you've made us for yourself. Everybody, knows it now, but Lord, you made it for yourself, but our hearts are restless until they rest in you. And that ties directly to just human, I know this can be used in like so many, like the wrong way, but human dignity, like the dignity of humanity because God became a man, right? And that God created us in his image. Like there's a dignity to us that because humans labor, then labor becomes dignified. Work becomes dignified. And I feel like when you're looking at the issue of AI, I think this Pope will have a lot of good things to say on that because, we have to be asking the question, yes, we can do this. We can automate everything. But I feel like the church is going to hopefully come in and say, ought we? If like humans need to labor is good. Yeah. Like, work is good. It's dignified. Yeah. It gives man dignity.
Well, again, we're not. So it's funny you bring that up because I've been reading a book, or I read a book over the last couple of weeks by Sebastian Morello, and it's called Mysticism, Magic, and Monasticism.
Monasteries.
Whatever, something like that. And it's interesting because
who is he, by the way?
I don't know. I only know him from the pages of this book.
Okay.
I assume that he's a traditional Catholic, probably attends a Tridentine. I don't know. So all I can judge it on is what I've read in the book. But it's a fascinating read because he says the major fallacy in the modern church is that we've adopted what he calls Cartesian dualism, right? So Descartes. Philosophically, Descartes separated mind from being. So we're talking about AI. Like you have this artificial mind, right? And of course, that's the big thing of our age. So mind away from being and God away from creation. So there's like dualism that's there that the church has kind of adopted. And we've lost the sense of groundedness. We've lost the sense of rootedness, stability, but also that creation is that we're not just a mind. We're embodied spirits, right? Mm-hmm. And creation is a communion with God, and it communicates God directly. And so the whole book is about like, well, how do we recapture that? How do we, quote unquote, re-enchant the Western world? Because that idea, that Cartesian dualism, has bewitched the Western world. And that's why we find ourselves in this kind of situation. Loss of faith. The I becomes the most important because if you're a mind, like reality, you make reality what it is, right? Instead of us looking at the accidents and understanding a substance behind it, we're creating reality in our own minds. And that's exactly what you see today, relativism, right? Your truth is your truth kind of thing. It all springs up, his argument is from this. And it's the church is guilty of it in instances as well. So his big push in the book was, well, not only do we need like the Benedict option, remember Rod Dreher's?
Yeah.
He says, no, we need actual actual Benedictines, actual monasteries. The stability that was there in Western Europe for over 1,000 years was brought by the Benedictine monks. Because they had vows of stability. They established monasteries. They stayed put, and they deeply integrated the gospel on the streets that they were built their monasteries on in those towns and villages and throughout the Western Europe.
Prayer and labor, by the way.
Yeah, right, exactly, right.
Mind and
body, right. You got to have it all. You got to have temple, gymnasium, and what's the third?
Temple, gymnasium,
academy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So you have to have all three, and that's kind of a big point of the book. It's really fascinating. So I do recommend it to folks.
You were talking to me the other day, and you said something about how you were doing something lately, just inspired by a few things that you're reading, and then now this book too at the same time.
Oh, it's all coming at the same time. Yeah, it's all happening at the same time. Look, so it was that book, but I've been reading Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross, kind of simultaneously.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, kind of simultaneously. But then Bishop Barron on Tucker Carlson was talking about creation isn't a one-time thing. We're constantly being created. Like You and I right now are in the mind of God. And so not only is he holding us in his mind, but he is also willfully making us exist. Like constantly, second after second, millisecond after millisecond.
Was that when he quoted Merton? He said prayer is the moment where you are in the or you're in the, what does he say? You're now being created. You're now being created by God or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. But that's what that discussion. So all this was happening in my world last couple of weeks, where you're take for example a tree now. We're told to as Catholics to practice the presence of God, right, constantly, through prayer and all that, but also just daily recognition of, like, the only reason we're here sitting having this cigar and the reason this cigar exists, like, God is literally creating us right now, like, and sustaining us, right? The word of God, wisdom is sustaining us right now. It's crazy to think about. And the tie into Teresa and John, and I can't remember which of the two it was, but it stuck out to me because either he or she was writing about looking at a flower and its beauty and just contemplating the flower, and he or she said, if I could just, like, almost forecasting the invention of the microscope. So looking at a flower, and if I just knew, like, the inner workings of it, how much more glory would I give to God? And that's the opposite of our mindset today, the modern world. Like, oh, we figured out photosynthesis, this and that, right? We know the inner workings of it. We got the microscope. We know how it all works, right? It's getting sunlight. And yet we've thrown out God. And we've separated God.
It's so bizarre.
From not just creation, but from creating, the ongoing act of creation down through eternity.
It's so bizarre in the Western world, especially that this whole thing has cropped up with scientism, where, like, they think that once they keep drilling down and finding out under the microscope more and more how things work, that they think, oh, well, then therefore God doesn't really need to exist. And you're like, well,
how'd you get there?
Like, by showing how God is, you're showing how God is doing that. Like photosynthesis, like, they're like, well, where's the miracle? We've already explained it's photosynthesis. You're like, well, dude, photosynthesis is the miracle. Yes. That's a miracle. Like, the fact that exists is a miracle. Yeah. I think it's funny, we just talking about Augustine, but I think it was Augustine. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe. I think Augustine was the one who talked about the sun, and how, like, we become accustomed to seeing the sunrise and set every day. And then once we're done seeing it so many times, we're not fascinated with it anymore. But if you had never seen a sunrise, you were blind or something, and then all of a sudden you could see again, and then for the first time you saw the sunrise and set a full day, you'd be like, "What the heck is that?"
Well, wasn't that the genius of G.K. Chesterton? Wasn't G.K. Chesterton the one who said that, it's very likely that every morning God says to the sun, "Rise."
Again. Do that again.
Yeah, do that again, and every evening do that again. That's actually true.
Yeah.
God is saying that every morning and every evening.
Exactly.
Like, completely sustaining the entire universe at any given second. And so the question really is, like, if I see a tree or I see a rainbow, as an example he gives in the book, like why did God create a world in which rainbows even happen?
Right.
What is God trying to communicate to us through a rainbow? Right. That was the question our forefathers asked. Not like, so it's a reflection of light and there's water involved. Like, no.
That's how a rainbow.
Right. But why a universe where a rainbow exists?
Right.
And why a universe where an acorn turns into an oak? What's God trying to tell us by that? And then you go back to the Gospels and you see Jesus using the earth and explaining the gospel through parables of the earth.
It's perfectly reasonable if someone says, like, why matter? Think about that. You don't have to have matter, because matter didn't exist at one point. So you don't have to have it in order to have creation. You can have angels, and that's it. Just
you can have the divine council,
a whole realm of minds. But God creates matter, and you're like, well, why? A perfectly good answer for that is that for Jesus, Like literally for Jesus to be able to explain the kingdom to us, and through matter for us to go to him and to go to the kingdom. Like, if you were to take away creation, you would not be able to read the Gospels. The Gospels you wouldn't even be able to read any of Jesus' teachings, because he's constantly talking about mustard seeds, like the rolling waves, like the coming of the weather, the fig tree, I'm the vine, you're the branches. Like everything that he uses to describe the kingdom of God describes matter, and it's almost like this is the problem that happened, I think, like also with like the Enlightenment. It's the Cartesian influence, like you said. Like the Enlightenment did this thing to us where it's like God created. It's the deist God. He created, and then creation just kind of like works as a mechanism. And so it's like you don't really care at that point about the watchmaker. You're just kind of looking at the watch. And dude, creation is not a watch and watchmaker. Like creation is incarnation.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think I have two thoughts on this. So, when we're talking about Benedictinism, right? What did the Benedictine mind bring to the Western Europe? It created what it created was a communal liturgical organism. Right? That's what it created. It didn't create an evangelistic program. It didn't create an alpha, or Catholic alpha or something. It created communities that were liturgical, right? And then we move outside of that when we throw off monasticism, right? And this new Cartesian dualism takes over. Now you get a church that's clerical and about ideas. It's not about building up people in devotion. It's about giving them a bunch of ideas. And then maybe those ideas will change their heart, kind of thing. But that's just not how the human works.
Right.
Like in the great Catholic tradition, it's been how do we teach people to rightly worship?
That's right.
And if you can teach them to rightly worship, they'll come to know God.
Yeah.
Right? That has been the whole Catholic experiment. That was a great thing about Catholicism, East and West, that we were building liturgical communities, liturgical organisms throughout Western Europe. And one thing, going back, sorry, to the book, but one thing brings up, I don't know what you think about it, but he says, and I thought it was interesting, even before the Enlightenment, he says you kind of saw this idea creeping in where, like, for example, with the mendicants and friars, for the Franciscans, the Dominicans, the Jesuits, it was about going out and evangelizing, right? So the whole Western Hemisphere, those are Jesuits and Franciscans that are blazing the trail, preaching the gospel, doing the good work, right? But perhaps it wasn't followed up with, let's establish monasteries, stable monasteries. Not, because even with Franciscan, monasteries or whatever, they can move around, but Benedictines are focused on working, laboring and worshiping, and the community is drawn in kind of into that thing. And so part of that led into that, and then the church kind of gives into that, where we don't follow up our teaching with liturgical community.
It's like sowing seeds but never actually farming, and tilling the soil.
So again, it's not something against St. Francis, not something against Franciscans, Dominicans, or the early Jesuits. It's that the church perhaps lost sight of what worked. But frankly, you think about St. Paul. St. Paul was the same way, like a Francis, where he's going out to the Mediterranean, and he's solely focused on just getting the word out across the Mediterranean, and then look, others are going to come and build on the foundation that I've laid.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't baptize. He's like, Apollos did, and Apollos water. He's like, but then now another's building upon it, and God will cause the growth, and then he's like, and then appoint for yourself presbyters in every city. So it's like establish yourself, instantiate yourselves.
But again, I think we look at on our channel, we look at history providentially, and you see that the first few centuries you don't have monasteries. Okay, you have tight knit liturgical communities though. But as the church begins to kind of spread, as you get to the second, third century, what does God send? Monks.
Yeah.
So you see monasticism. So the first couple of centuries of the church, it's about getting the word out. It's about preaching against what the rabbis. It's about preaching against the pagans and the pagan philosophers and all that. And then once that word is out, now it's like, okay, our communities are getting larger, and now we need to stabilize them in the worship of God. And then you see the great liturgies being produced in the 3rd and 4th centuries that then leads into the great monastic culture of late antiquity with St. Basil the Great.
Yeah.
In the West, John Cassian, then St. Benedict, and then it kind of unfurls from there, and then you have this great stability over the next 1,000 years.
Yeah, look, Christianity is not a program of teachings. It's not a method. It's not purely speaking a philosophy.
Yeah.
It's not this. It's not the.
It can be.
It's not just this, a book of doctrines. Like the doctrines are there because something happened. Christianity is something happened. God became a man. That's Christianity. God became man so that we might become God. And that's why, more than anything, our liturgical piety is honestly the most important thing, because doctrine will come from it. That's where doctrine comes from.
Yeah.
You don't get doctrine by sitting in an academy and thinking all the time. You get doctrine because people are praying and they're offering the first fruits of their labor, like to the church. They're receiving the Eucharist. They're receiving the sacraments. They're being redeemed. They're being saved. That's what then creates doctrine, because you see something, you see another way of life that presents itself to and imposes itself upon Christianity. You say, that's not it. That's not it. And now you have to say something. And that's where you identify heresy. But it comes from the inner life, the inner cult of the church. It's like we've been talking about in our John episodes, where, the whole idea of Christians gathering together for liturgy is so that the charismatic experience of the apostles of being with Jesus and hearing him and touching him and handling the word of life, what we've heard, what we've seen, right? That we deliver to you. And how do we deliver it to you? On the night he was betrayed, he took bread, and so the more we, as the church, the more that we belittle the liturgical life, the life of fasting. I mean, my gosh, look at how we fast now, where it's like you can basically eat all throughout Lent as long as you're just eating a big old fat fish. It's like, that's not it. That's not it. I understand you can play to the least common denominator, but that is the minimum, folks. Like we're supposed to ascend. We're supposed to do more. And that's what creates culture. Culture is the cult.
The cult.
And
the cultus.
And we have definitely lost a sense of that. And I think actually that's part of the wisdom in Pope Leo reaching out to the East. Because while the East has had issues in moral theology and things like that, and being faithful in those areas, they have been very faithful in their liturgy, in their liturgical traditions. That's honestly what keeps them together.
Yeah,
is the liturgy. That's it. That's the only thing you can tie together between the Serbians and the Greeks and the Russians and whoever, right? It's their liturgical life that makes them recognize that we're the same. And I think, and their monasteries, they didn't have a collapse of monastic life. We did,
right?
Because of this Cartesian influence, like you've been saying,
right?
So I think that's where it is wise for the Pope of Rome to reach out to the Eastern traditions too, because they need something that we have, but we also do need a reminder of what we ought to still have, right? And have thriving at least.
Yeah. What did Leo say in that one sermon? He said, "We've lost." Not the mystique in our liturgies, but maybe the mystery. Yeah, we need to reemphasize the mystery within the liturgy itself. And actually, in watching his liturgies, this past weekend for the feast of St. Peter and Paul, it was a really beautiful liturgy. Dominated by Latin, dominated by Gregorian chant and polyphony, and all the Eastern Catholic Ukrainian bishops were there actually on hand, and then Patriarch Emmanuel from Chalcedon from the Orthodox Church was on hand, and they prayed at the tomb of St. Peter together. But I saw a lot of it in that particular liturgy, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
And doesn't he have? I think Leo starting that, or somebody started the Gregorian chant, like teaching Gregorian chant, or singing with the Pope kind of thing. He's got a great. Leo's got a great chanting voice. I wish he would do it more. I mean, he'll chant, a few parts throughout the liturgy. He chanted, he intoned like the Gloria, or intoned the Creed, or the in the name of the Father and Son and Holy Spirit to open the Mass. He'll chant, but heck, I think he should. Let's chant that canon.
Yeah, and I don't want anyone who's listening who may not. I don't know. I can hear some voices just because I interact with so much with different kinds of Catholics online. I can hear some people coming in and saying like, "Oh, here we go, tradies again. All they think about is liturgy. And it's like, listen, man. First of all, I'm not a trad. Second, like, it's not. This isn't about like the Latin Mass. It's about our ethos in worship. It's about the piety that was delivered to us. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the Novus Ordo or the TLM or the Ambrosian Rite or the Liturgy of John Chrysostom or the Liturgy of St. Basil. There's an ethos to Christian worship that is our culture.
I think there is, and it's hard to mark out, there is an objective way to worship Catholically.
Yes. And I'm not talking Roman Catholic.
Right.
I'm saying
there is
Catholically.
There is an essence to it that is hard to define, but you know it when you see it. Mm-hmm. And to your point, like, you can argue that the Novus Ordo watered down certain things or stayed away from certain things in some of the prayers or whatever. True. But it still has enough of the tradition and the depth to form a liturgical organism.
Yeah.
to form people in the right worship. We attend Novus Ordo.
Right.
We attend Novus Ordo.
And I always have. Even when we had the TLM, you attended TLM more. Like, I only go to the Novus Ordo. Like...
Yeah. And so the Novus Ordo can shape us and form us when it is done in line with the tradition that has been handed on to us.
Exactly.
A lot of times we do a lot of different things at, our parish, and it's a nice blend sometimes. So sometimes you'll get like an opening hymn where the congregation sings, and then it moves right into the introit, which is Gregorian. Then it goes to the gradual, because in the United States you're allowed to use the Graduale Romanum. So it goes into the chanted gradual. Then sometimes you have some polyphony throughout the Mass, silence, of course, and then ends with the congregational hymn. So you have the bookends of congregational singing, but in the center of it, there's Gregorian, there's silence, and it's just a beautiful way to experience the worship of God.
Yeah.
In the end.
Yeah, I feel like the framers of the liturgical reform, at least the ones that were well motivated, I think they assumed that Catholics were going to celebrate the Novus Ordo as Catholics. I think that they just assumed, like, oh yeah, but we're Catholic, so they're going to pray this as Catholics, like with Catholic piety.
Yeah.
But that clearly was a miscalculation of where the people were at and what was happening in the spirit of
it's
the
only
time.
It's only as of late, past 10, 15 years, where even anecdotally in our own life, people older than us, Gen X and then baby boomer generation, who started to realize, I didn't know they changed the Mass. I just thought it was in vernacular.
They translated it.
Yeah, I just thought it was in the vernacular. Yeah. So when the changes were introduced, that's what probably most Catholics throughout the world thought. Like, we celebrate, the priest is now facing us, and it's in English for us, and whatever, we'll go on with our lives. And that was like, I think, why the Novus Ordo spread so quickly and universally, basically because everybody thought, it's just the old one, just vernacular. It didn't reach everybody that, there are some changes here that we need to look at and make sure we have a corrective on, or whatever it might be. Yeah. Which is why it's so offensive. The Bishop Martin in Charlotte, that was so offensive.
And that's the thing, because the liturgy the Mass is, there's ethos and content. They changed the content, or they made huge adjustments to the content, but they didn't address they didn't feel the need to have heavy rubrics to keep the ethos in line. And so the rubrics are all kind of gone, but the minute that's gone, the ethos is going to change easily with the culture pressing upon us. Yeah. And so now what you have is like abbreviated and abridged Catholic content with a non-Catholic ethos pressing upon us as we celebrate the liturgy. And like that Bishop of for those who don't know what Dan was just talking about. So like the Bishop of Charlotte had a letter of his leaked that he didn't release. I don't think he released it.
It wasn't published.
It was leaked.
Yeah, unfortunate for him.
He was going to send it out to the parishes of his diocese, and it was like literally the opposite of what Pope Leo is doing with the papacy, where like he feels the gravity of the office, that I must decrease, and the office increase. Like this was an instance where the bishop was like taking his own little liturgical proclivities and like was going to force it onto all the priests in his diocese, like get rid of altar rails, no St. Michael's prayer after mass. Like
I too did. I wrote a commentary to that letter, and I too did not publish it. But it was more of like a therapeutic mental.
I'm gonna leak
it. Leak it to the public. It was more of a therapeutic mental exercise for me. But
because you had a mental breakdown.
Yeah, because sometimes I can get weird, and I like reading through the general instruction on the Roman Missal, the Germ, and then just the canons around the Mass, and then just the different writings that John Paul II has had, Benedict has had on the liturgy, and kind of putting that all together to kind of comment on what Bishop Martin was wanting to do, basically.
Yeah.
But you're right. It was like these little proclivities, right? Creating your own reality, really.
Yeah. And forcing that reality on someone.
Well,
is like what?
The one thing that stood out to me in that was he said this was probably the most offensive part of it. There were a lot of unfortunate offensive parts. The one part was he said, okay, if you're going to have candles and a crucifix on the altar, the candles, actually he says the candles should be around the altar, not on it, which is against the Germ. The Germ says you can have candles on the altar. But then he says the crucifix can't be upright to block the people's view of the vessels and the priest. It has to lay flat, he says. Like, when ever in the history of the church have we ever said, oh yeah, the crucifix, lay it flat? It's always lift high the cross. It's always serpent in the desert. It's always lifted up high.
What spirit would inspire that?
I don't want to say what spirit it is, but it is a spirit. Oh man, I'm uneven here. I'm not doing well.
There you go. I mean, yeah. What spirit says get that cross out of the way so the people can see better? And honestly, just practically speaking, when was there ever a time where an altar crucifix was so obstructing the people's view that they like, oh man, I can't even see what he's doing up there?
You know what's interesting?
Like, what?
It's interesting. I've been noticing Pope Leo has had his altar arrangement changes a lot.
Yeah.
He's had the Benedictine one where he has the crucifix in the middle and then the 6 candles off to the 3 and 3 on each kind of cornered on the altar. So he's done that. The crucifix was a little smaller that was in the middle, but he's had that one. He's had the arrangement of the crucifix standing next to the altar on what you would call the epistle side of the altar, right, on the floor. He's had that. But the one he's doing often, and he actually did it again for St. Peter and Paul, he had the 6 candles, so 3 and 3 off the side. He actually added the 7th for Solemn Papal Mass. He added the 7th candle, and then and so that it would look equal to each other each side, he had the crucifix. Mm-hmm. So he had crucifix in 3, and then 3 and 1 on the candles side. And at first, it was funny because Pope Leo, the first time I saw that altar arrangement, apparently it was a rabbit hole. It was a Facebook rabbit hole. But apparently that arrangement where the crucifix is on the altar but off to the left, it started in 1984. Like that was the first time that they started arranging it. That whoever the MC was at the time, I forget. His MC now is Archbishop Ravelli. But so Ravelli's kind of going back to that. But it was funny because the first time that arrangement, I was like, well, that's a weird altar arrangement. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Maybe because I haven't been watching papal masses that much in the past few years. But now that I'm watching it more, it's starting to show up. It's starting to show up more. And the first time Pope Leo, it was outside, I think, in St. Peter's Square, and he goes to incense the altar at the start of Mass, and he's looking around for the crucifix. He doesn't know where it is, and he looks, and then he turns, and then he turns and has to. So clearly, he was caught off guard by it.
Yeah.
Which tells you that it's probably his MC who's making the arrangements for the altar. But now, since then, there's been a few liturgies where he's had that arrangement. And he knows right away. Okay, boom, left side.
Yeah.
Incense the crucifix.
But all that, like, just to say that, when I was reading through the Bishop of Charlotte's, and I'm using the Bishop of Charlotte as an example of something that has prevailed upon us for the last 60, 70 years. And actually, I'm glad it leaked because we've always talked to each other about like, dude, I'd really like to sit down and catalog all the things that started out as abuses and then got like codified as like, oh yeah, well yeah, I guess you can do that then since everyone has started to do it, you know. Clearly started off as abuses and then it was allowed and then it was allowed and then it becomes like regulated. Like, oh, now you have to do that. Yeah. You're like, well, wait a second. That was an abuse before. Then it was allowed, and now it's being regulated. And I was like, man, I'd love to catalog. In his letter, he basically cataloged all the worst ideas of liturgy for the past 60 years in one place. So I'm glad he at least did the legwork for it.
You're right. That it was leaked was a good thing because the backlash on it.
Mm-hmm. Because it was like, no. Because, look, this is now talking about just the Novus Ordo. Like, no.
Yeah.
The answer is no. Mm-hmm. Like, the Novus Ordo has a dignity that ought to be preserved by Catholic ethos. And you are not going to give us your weird proclivities and make it a rule that we have to worship the way that you do probably in your apartment.
And frankly, it was a beautiful thing. As long as people kept it respectful, it was a beautiful thing to see because that was the church in action.
Yeah.
A single bishop is getting ready to make a pronouncement on the liturgy, and the faithful rise up and say, whoa, wait a minute here.
But the faithful had the authority to do that because we can see the Pope's masses. So it's like if the Pope was doing all that stuff, it'd be kind of harder for the lady to say anything. She'd be like, gosh, I don't know, because Rome's doing it, you know. But watch Leo's masses, watch any papal mass, and literally everything that he is outlawing in his little letter is what the Pope does.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, so who are you? Like, you're a bishop. You're not the Pope. Like, you have no authority to tell Rome, basically, which is what it is. Like, I know he's telling his diocese, but by implication, you're also telling Rome or something that they can't do it. You're like, no, that's not how this works, man. Like that.
Yeah, and it's not just about watching papal liturgies either. It's like we can read the Germ,
right?
Like we know we all have the documents in front of us now.
Right.
It's it's not 1970 where it's like I have to go to the library just to read the Germ. Mm-hmm. It's like I can look it up online. I got it on my bookshelf. I can look if that's true or not, kind of thing. It's an easy exercise for any layperson who knows anything about liturgy to look up and speak up about it.
And that's why I feel like stepping back from the Bishop of Charlotte, but just to the wider church, like to just, especially in America, even like the USCCB and stuff. I feel like everybody senses that, that whether accidentally or not, right, that in the post-Vatican II era, we have had a significant loss of faith and loss of Catholic ethos in the Western world.
Yeah.
And they're all trying to figure out what to do about it. And back to your point in the book that you were reading, like they're always trying to come up with some program, like oh, well, then we have to establish some kind of a program like the Eucharistic Congress or this or that. It's like you don't have to produce another document, you don't have to produce another whatever. What we need to do is celebrate the liturgy properly, and to fast and to pray and to deepen our life, to deepen our incarnational life, as Catholics. So it's like all you have to do, bishops, is start properly regulating how the Mass is celebrated according to the tradition.
Here's why, because the life of the church. So the early church, very much like the first, second century, whatever, was very much about the life in Christ.
Yeah.
That was the teaching. And then as the church grows throughout the centuries, it then became about life in the church, which means the liturgy.
Yeah.
To shape and form people. And he has a comment in the book, I think he's quoting Rahner. And he says, Rahner, who he doesn't like, he says Rahner has this quote, and if you take the quote and you extrapolate it and just have it stand alone, he says if the church is going to survive, along lines like this, so if the church is going to survive, or if Christianity is going to survive, the future of Christianity is mystic. And what I think Sebastian, the author, means by that is that rootedness in the mystical tradition, right? Liturgy, contemplation, recollection, and it's the life in the church. So the liturgy, it's the liturgy that enlivens the mystical life in us, which then produces in us a change, and then we go out and we evangelize and we teach and we exactly. So that's why we have such a focus on the liturgy, because it's the beginning of the mystical experience for most Christians.
Yeah.
Not everybody can be in a monastery, but everybody can be in the church.
Yeah.
And when you get to experience the mystery, the communion with the body and how bodily our worship is, all of that is super important to create mystics. But I'm going to point here because I wanted to question you on it. So the universal call to holiness, Vatican II. That's kind of, so you can tell what's been on my mind lately. John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, mysticism, this book, all this, creation and practicing the presence of God. But the universal call to holiness at Vatican II is famous for that, right? Everybody's called to this holiness. The argument of Sebastian's book, I think he would say that not everybody can sit down and take in Teresa or John of the Cross, but then there's other great books. I forget the name of it. I don't know. Maybe we'll post it after we post this video. But it does say that John and Teresa had in mind the layperson. It wasn't just primarily they were writing to religious, but there are these moments in their writings, and I've seen it myself, where they're actually speaking to lay people. Like John of the Cross has letters to a lay woman, for example, where he's teaching her the mystical life. And the universal call to holiness in V2 should be a call back to the mystical life.
Yeah.
Recollection, contemplation. Contemplation, infused prayer, we call it, right? That's a gift of God, which means there's no method to it. There's no method to it, right? We start with like discursive prayer with words and meditation on images of the gospel and stuff. But infused prayer and contemplation, that's a gift of God. That can come at any moment, at any time, right? And so that's what the universal call to holiness, I think, is trying to speak to.
Okay.
So
what you just said sparked. Okay, so I feel like that helps maybe even put into perspective like what is God up to with us? Like what is God up to with Vatican II and this post era and all that, like with all the topsy-turvy stuff that's going on? Like there's always a method in the madness. Like providence is always at work. So that like God is doing something. But what we were talking about earlier where you said that there's this sense in which the church goes out, just evangelize, spread the seed out there, sow it, all that stuff. But then there's an era that comes in that says like establish yourselves, just like with the Babylonian exile. They go out, it's a different context, but the same thing where like scatters them among the nations. But then he says, build stuff, instantiate yourselves in all those cultures, right? Make the name of your God known now, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the Vatican II thing was that because the church at the time had a strong sense. It wasn't just that it was like, it was a post-war era, we all need to get along. It was more than that. And I like what Bishop Barron usually says, where he's like, a lot of people try to say it was a pastoral council, or where it was, and Bishop Barron is like, that is not the right read. The right read is that it was an evangelistic council. The idea was that the church felt like she was building institutions that were starting to feel cold and hollow, and that she wasn't going out into all the world and making disciples in that charismatic kind of way that the apostles did. And so... And honestly, man, post-Vatican II, I mean, look at this global South. Like, look at like where the church just like exploded. I know there's arguments where people will say like, oh, it was already doing that beforehand. Whatever. Okay. The whole thing here though is that, look at all those Bibles on my shelf, those Catholic Bibles.
Are they all Catholic?
That wasn't.
I think you're a heretic.
Not all of them. But like, look at all these like Catholic like books for lay people. Like the lay people kind of did like what Vatican II was calling lay people to do, like to go and like be Catholic, like publish books, like be a Catholic doctor, like the lay people have like, by and large, not perfectly, but we have sort of responded to that call in a way where like the word has gone out.
Yeah, I see that, but it's almost like, well, it wouldn't have happened. It would have happened anyway because of technology, wouldn't have?
Maybe,
like all this is in our hands because of, it's at our fingertips now, kind of thing.
But think of like the best of what post-Vatican II Catholicism has produced, the best of it, not the riffraff and like liberal Catholicism and stuff. But think of like the best of it. Like we have a really amazing things that Catholicism has done since the Second Vatican Council. But again, we also had a decline in our monastic life. We had a decline in our institutions. Catholic private education is in total disarray. And so maybe now it's time. This is why I think you do see it in the younger generations and stuff, that like there's this sense that like we need to recover our ethos, though. Like we need to recover the monastery. We need to recover like our instantiation like of the Catholic cult.
I think that's how I perhaps can best come to terms with Vatican II.
Yeah.
Is if we look at it that way, that it was just one part of a message. Well, he would say that it was a fail, that like, oh, because you were speaking to just minds, then Vatican II had a bunch of ideas it threw up at you.
Yeah.
And then those ideas are going to change you, kind of thing. But if we look at it more like, yeah, it was a call to evangelize the world, the call to holiness, all that stuff. But now tie it to, okay, maybe this is the age where God is calling the church now. Phase 2, settle in, stabilize right worship, and then we can move forward.
Right, because we have 1.3 billion Catholics in the world now.
Yeah.
You know, like so now it's time to recover the sense of the holy and the reverent and to build. And yeah, I think also, if that's the positive spin on the Vatican II thing, the more, negative spin would be that a lot of folks in the hierarchy at Vatican II, but also totally among the laity, caught, I have nowhere to put it, but like caught the Anglican virus, where it was like, okay, here's the thing. When you look at like the history of the church, when you know that like there's this spirit that keeps like trying to impose itself on the church throughout history, and I mean you go all the way back to even like the Origenism, like this like there's two types of we'll talk about it in our channel, but like there's two types of Christians actually. There's the psychiki, and then there's the pneumatics, right? So there's the fleshly ones, and then there's the spiritual. And yeah, the fleshly people, they still need all the things, right? They need all that stuff. But the spiritual men in the church, they can transcend those things. Like, and Origen would say, you can even transcend the need for the physical Eucharist, because you can mentally attain to union, Eucharistic union, and all this kind of stuff. And Origenism plagues the church like all the way up till the iconoclast controversy. Honestly, I'm writing an article right now on the iconoclast controversy. This stuff's fresh in my mind too. And this perpetual temptation to Origenism that is counterbalanced by this theology that was recovered. Really, it was a recovered theology that came strongly through Athanasius. But Athanasius was really speaking the theology of the ground, the people. Whereas like more and more classically educated patristic writers were kind of adopting more of this orogenic position of like the mind. And they were trying to make Catholicism a religion of intellect, of intellecting and contemplation only, as divorced from creation. And Athanasius was like, nope. And from him it's like Gregory Nazianzus, nope, like no, incarnation. And when you come to the iconoclast controversy, it's so funny, dude. It's the same playbook. You could literally just sub in like Henry VIII for Emperor Leo. Like you can sub in like the entire program, and it is literally the English Reformation. They are the first move: close the monasteries, seize the monasteries, give them away as property to like the gentry, like plaster over the icons, persecute monks, make them get married, ridicule them publicly, and all this stuff. And it was like, and make Christianity a religion of mind. But also then there's this secular aspect to it, where it's like, yeah, you got rid of all that stuff, but you're still venerating images of the emperor. And it's the same that you come to the English Reformation, because I feel like the Continental Reformation was kind of like, yeah, that's the same kind of stuff that the church has kind of always dealt with, like radical heresies that you're like, okay, I mean, that's a heresy. The English Reformation, to me, is like the most dangerous of all those reformations, because it kept a lot of the outer trappings of Catholic institution, but changed the heart of it completely.
Except for monasticism.
Yeah. And it was funny because then these like early English reformers were saying, like, oh, we're recovering primitive English Catholicism. And you're like, well, if you're trying to recover primitive English Catholicism, your first step is to close the monasteries. I mean, primitive English Catholicism is monasteries. That's all it was. It was a cluster of monasteries and little towns growing up around monasteries. So if your first move is to close the monasteries, I don't think you're recovering English Catholicism. And what Cranmer did was, just like we were saying, like he changed the cult so that it became very dialogical. It became very much about like the people being able to understand and apprehend in the mind, and downplayed all the stuff of the body in Catholic cult, and it was a total disaster. Yeah. I mean, is it any wonder why?
On the face of it, I mean, you can see.
Yeah. Is it any wonder why like the most liberal of like traditional Protestant denominations like is the Anglican Church? Like it's like communion, because that whole and then like the whole Cartesian influence, like it created that Cartesian world. It set all the proper foundations for it. And I feel like even in Rome, like the gates of hell won't prevail against Rome on this front, but to say that we haven't been attacked, I think would be like very, very like wildly ignorant or naive.
Yeah, and it's an active thing. The gates of hell won't prevail against us.
Yeah.
Like we're the ones attacking.
Yeah. And
the attack that was used were the monasteries. That was the attack to Satan. Were the monks. They were our foot soldiers, for example. They were the front line for the church all those centuries. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And so I get kind of like worried now, and that's why I'm so heartened by Pope Leo, because you move forward and you have this, well, you have Gnostic dualism. That's really what we're all about now, where it's like my mind is what I am. My body, that's changeable. Like, I could be whatever I want, I could be a woman, I could be a man, I could be a whatever. And now you take that has been fully established and instantiated in our culture with not a strong Catholic counterbalance to that. We're very weak. Our monasteries are gone, like our monastic life has been so degraded. And now they're on the next step of like, now they're creating AI, which in my mind is basically creating a means by which the old demons can come
the
back again.
Gods are going to use that technology.
That they'll use that technology to embody themselves and to reestablish covenants with the nations, like to literally enslave us all once again to idols.
That's a great point. There's nothing new under the sun.
No.
The ancients, the idol was created so that the spirit of the god would come into the idol. Yeah, that's the whole point. And then the whole Adam story, right? No, God creates a living idol. Adam breathes into him. The pagans were doing the same thing with wood and statues, and then, calling the god into that statue, kind of thing. So that the demons were ready to embody those gods and receive worship. That was the whole problem.
Yeah.
God gave the nations over to the gods to lead them in right worship to Yahweh, and they didn't do that. So now with AI, you have the same exact thing.
What the demons, I think, are preparing us for.
The Dementors.
What I think the demons are preparing us for is, well, they started with just male and female. They're interchangeable. What do you mean? There's no difference. Like, why can't a woman be a priest? Why can't this? Why can't that? And then why can't women go to work? Why can't women, women don't have to have babies. Like, women can. Okay, they started there. Then it became homosexuality, because it was like, oh, well, you don't need a man and a woman to get married. You need a man and a man because it's interchangeable. You got a woman and a woman. You could have, okay, we went with that. And then the next lie was, oh, and by the way, this whole like male and female thing, like you can be a male or a female if you want to. Like then it was transgenderism. And now they're talking about transhumanism. Because now that the body has no meaning whatsoever for our identity, like, well, then transhumanism. So why don't we just like take this AI thing we created, and now what we can do is implant it, and now we can be a totally different thing. And all that it is it's the envy of the demons of our flesh. We talked about this in our one episode on
Jesus' flesh,
the demons in Jesus' flesh, or something like that. The devil in Jesus' flesh. But the whole point again is that like the devil fell through envy. Not just of God. He fell through envy of us, because it was like, well, wait a minute, these bags of bones and flesh, God like seems to be like obsessed with them when like I'm spirit. Like I'm I'm beyond that. I'm more powerful even. Like, what do you mean? Like, we have dignity. And God's like, no, Adam's my priest.
Adam's going to be my imager.
And Satan couldn't take that. And neither could a ton of the angels. So what they're trying to do is to belittle our flesh. Any time that there is a belittlement of matter, a belittlement of creation, a belittlement of flesh, and an elevation to the exclusion of the flesh of like intellecting and mental, you have that spirit.
And there again, isn't that interesting that it's in this age where we've bought into the mind versus being option that the church pronounced the Blessed Virgin Mary's assumption.
Yeah.
Assumption of the body, and that in the Eastern liturgies she stands above the cherubim and the seraphim.
Yeah.
Like,
I hate that, man.
God, Jesus.
The demons hate that.
Jesus obviously is the great icon, right? But he's God and man. But God raised up also a human being perfectly.
Yeah.
And raised her, as we teach in Catholic theology, above the spiritual entities. Mm-hmm. She says, and so human flesh and a human sits above the spiritual entities.
And the fact that it's a woman.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a woman, because women were the ones that Satan went after first. He went after Eve. Like, that's I'm getting her. Like, and now it's like this woman is above him, and all the statuary and all the iconography is the new Eve crushing him. And you're like,
this is the stuff I wish somebody would go on Joe Rogan's podcast, please, and just explain this. I feel like if he spent 10 or 15 minutes with this discussion, but with a Catholic theologian, or even like a Bishop Barron going on there and speaking on this topic of like AI, and he's so obsessed with Joe Rogan is with aliens and demons. It'd be awesome for some Catholic reach out to Joe Rogan and get on,
because he's so close so many times, and then he just goes off.
Yeah. But the whole alien thing that's hot right now, AI right now, the church has answers to all these things. And there was some talk, I think, of the church going to speak about the phenomenon that are going on. There was like some
UAP stuff.
I think I heard. Yeah, I think there was some. They're kind of looking to prepare something. I don't know, but it's almost like if Pope Leo were to do a document, an encyclical, say on AI, maybe some of that would be kind of in there. Again, because the enemy is going to use AI as their idol.
Oh yeah,
and that's going to be the false god of our age, for sure.
Totally. And becoming like interplanetary, like with like Elon Musk, aspirations of that, and talking about that. It's
so what would you say to Joe Rogan on aliens?
I mean, I feel like who actually did the best job with him on aliens was Tucker Carlson, because Tucker Carlson was like, well, it's obviously demons, and
he's always like, it's spiritual, it's supernatural, yeah, super.
And Joe, I could see, was like,
I believe that.
What? Like, I know it. But no, like Joe was like, really? But you can tell that like Tucker planted a seed in his head, because he's brought it up a few times on other episodes where he's like, well, Tucker thinks it's like demons.
Tucker,
like,
the great evangelist.
Yeah. But, and I don't even know how Tucker got there. Like what made him think that. I don't know. I thought that was really interesting that he just came out and said that very boldly. And I was like, yes. Like, I'm so glad you brought it up. Like, because I don't know what it is. I have a lot of stupid theories, like a lot of crazy ones. Like, I mean, I've thought like, what if it's demons trying to create alien flesh, and using the material creation to make these hybrid, like reptilian type, like weird. That's why they always have like smooth skin. They look like half reptile, half human. This is weird stuff. I know, but I'm just saying, like, they hate our. All I know is that the demons hate our flesh. But they're also envious.
They're also obsessed with it.
They're also obsessed with it and envious of it. That's why, like, all the, all the exorcists will tell you that, like, dude, in exorcist movies, they, like, curse God and curse the Virgin. But exorcists will tell you they don't do that. Demons do not do that. Demons are always denigrating human flesh and saying, this is my bag of bones. Like, what do you want with this like,
and that's why you get the self-hating,
Yes, self-flagellation and all that stuff, because they envy our flesh and they hate it at the same time. Like, there was a dispute over the body of Moses. Like, and so it wouldn't surprise me if the demons are involved in, and it's always weird. Isn't it weird that humans get abducted? That's always the story, that they get abducted. What does that
And then
mean?
there's like tests on their body.
Tests on
happening.
their bodies. They inject them with things, whatever, and then they go back and then they're home and they're like, what? And then like there was one I saw where a guy had an X-ray and he had like weird stuff inside of his like objects inside of his body after his abduction. And so you're like, look, I don't know what any of this is. I'm just saying that like there is something very demonic and dark going on, and the church has not turned its attention to those.
But I think,
things.
well, yeah, but I think that's our opportunity.
Yeah.
To pounce on this for the world, to give them an answer, because they're all everybody's looking. Everybody's talking about aliens. Everybody's talking about flying phenomenon. All this stuff. The church actually has really great answers for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If we just tell them what
From the tradition, speak from the tradition.
And again, I think it goes back to what we've been saying all along. Heaven and earth are intertwined. Mm-hmm. The spiritual realm communicates with the physical realm, and the physical realm with the spiritual. On earth as it is in heaven. That's what we pray every day. And so those types of interactions, it's not crazy. Mm-hmm. Like when people are like, "Oh, alien," but I don't think anybody says that anymore. No. Oh, you believe in aliens?
No.
Like that's crazy. No, I don't think anybody. So we have an opportunity to pounce on that, where the age, actually in an odd way, even though they're Cartesian dualists, in an odd way, most people probably believe there's fleshly aliens out there.
Yes. And this is the thing, dude. The hierarchy of being, I don't know how many other levels there are between us and angels.
Pseudo Dennis, what do you say, 9?
Yeah, maybe there's another level that we've never known about between us and angels. And maybe it's another fallen race that happens to also be embodied, but it's not human, right? It's not fully human in the image of God.
They're not designated as imagers of God.
Right. And I was listening to this one episode of Rogan where he also has now started to postulate the theory that like the aliens that we're always calling aliens are actually beings that don't have bodies at all, and that they project themselves as body. And you're like, and so he says like, he's like, we don't know what reality is really like. Maybe there are like beings that don't have bodies like we do. And I'm like, bro. Angels and demons, like we've literally been saying
but even deeper than that, not just angels and demons and cherubim and seraphim, but the council gods, the sons of God, who are these creatures. These are creatures. These are spiritual creatures that live in the other realm, and the realms speak to each other, which is why even
under the water too.
Yeah, underwater. Yeah,
we like the Bible talks about the chaos of the waters, and there's like the beast from the sea, and you're like, we've only even like explored 10% of the ocean. Like the ocean is literally another planet. Like there, and so like what we have all these like legends of Atlantis, this like civilization that lives underwater, and you're like, so it's like we don't know.
But
man.
but again, back to the Catholic thing. Why do Catholics believe the things they do? Everything's sacramental. Creation's a sacramental, and when a Catholic priest blesses something, that has actual authority in heaven and on earth.
Yeah,
that's the authority that God created the kind of universe where a blessing is an actual thing. Baptism leaves the indelible mark on our soul. Right. Like when you're baptized, you're forever baptized. Yeah. Like no matter what you say, you've forever been baptized. So what we do here physically communicates to the spiritual realm as well, and then what happens in the spiritual realm communicates to us as well.
Why did God create man? So that he could become man.
Yeah.
Like, why did God create creation? So that he can enter it?
And the flip side of that, spells, magic, witches, all that stuff that's really, again, hot. Maybe because Harry Potter, I don't know, wizardry, in a weird way. But that is real stuff. Mm-hmm. People are in the occult. Yeah. Spells are real, just like blessings are real. Yeah. And everything that's here is a sacramental. It's a sacrament of God. It's a communication of the divine.
Yeah, and we have to recover that like you just said, like that we are currently being created right now as we sit here. That tree outside is being created now. Right now. God is sustaining it now with His life. Like he is sustaining it all. Everything in creation is some kind of an analogy of the divine. It's sacred. That's the sacramental worldview.
But that's why we look to the patristic fathers and the medieval fathers so much, because they were so rooted in that metaphysic, that Neoplatonic metaphysic, Plotinus. Mm-hmm. That was like this beautiful foundation substructure that then we took into we brought the gospel to it and baptized it.
Well, St. Augustine, I read in the Platonists, that the Word was God, right? Mm-hmm. But what I didn't read in them was that the Word became flesh. Yeah. So it's like it's the Neoplatonic cosmology, but what you throw into that is that, and then God becomes man.
Yeah, and again, coming back, rounded out. I'm thankful to God that we have an Augustinian,
Yeah,
as our pope, and again, we don't know where it's going to lead. We're only 2 months. Like we're in the age where it's like we get caught up in every little thing. He's got a whole pontificate to live.
a lot of yeah.
God willing, a whole pontificate to live. But it just seems like God has situated, obviously, the proper person in place providentially.
Yeah.
For our specific age.
Yeah, and I think, like I was saying before, with how our age has become so obsessed in nuance and no longer receives statements that are black and white, I think we need to be the change agents of that, so that we have a papacy that can speak prophetically. Because, dude, there's no such thing as a nuanced prophet. That doesn't exist. Prophets don't speak in nuance. Prophets speak directly, cutting through bone and marrow. And one of the most prophetic documents was Humanae Vitae for our time. Rerum Novarum, Humanae Vitae. There's ones that really stand out, and you're like, that was so prophetic.
Yeah,
Everything
even
says,
long before the communist revolutions even took place, Leo the 13th already saw its evils.
Right.
You know,
like before even like unrestrained capitalism brought us, took us from like the McDonald's that had, you've seen those memes now where it has like the old McDonald's from the 80s and it has like all the like slides and
play
stuff.
place
And then it shows like the new McDonald's. It looks like a communist block.
But now like structure that's gray and
so it's like everything like unrestrained capitalism and communism both for some in a weird way because of human sinfulness lead to like the same results, just ugliness, just an ugly world. So he was able to see through that before you could even like predict anything. And Humanae Vitae is another one that like obviously like already coming out and saying, IVF can't do that, like or like abortion, no, like
contraception,
abortion, no, but contraception. You're like, well, that's not immediately obvious, like yeah, no, like it's wrong, and you're like, wow, okay, and that's what we need. Like that's what we actually really do need to pray for this pontificate to speak really well. And
to speak limitedly,
but to speak prophetically on this AI thing, that the Holy Spirit really would give to the world through the church, like, yeah, you can do this, but ought you? Just the same way with the atom bomb. It's like, okay, yeah, you can create the atomic bomb, but should you? What's the purpose of that? To go and drop it on 2 cities of Japanese Christians, right? So it's like. We really do need to be praying for this Pope, that now he's taken on this big project and he knows that he is so inadequate. And I feel like that will show you that, like, just like St. Paul was so inadequate, like Peter was so inadequate, and yet, like Bishop Barron talked about recently, where he's like, where's Nero's successors? Where's the successor? Where's the Roman Empire today? Nowhere. You know where it is? It's the fisherman's empire is all over the world.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah.
That's brilliant. Love that. So I think we would agree, like, we don't always want to hear from Rome.
Right.
It's not a good thing. But on that, I think the AI topic, we want to hear from Rome on. I'm going to throw a wrench in this. Because I have to. Are
we still rolling?
What do you think?
Is everything still on?
We're still on. What do you? So Traditione Custodes. What is the fix? Do you just leave it? What's the way? What is I have in my mind what a possible way forward that maybe perhaps Pope Leo would do or think about. But I think it is important. We are in the midst of liturgy wars, and we just have to again get to some kind of settlement. And Traditione Custodes was not that. No. We know that. So what are your thoughts on that?
So under Pope John Paul II, you could have allowances to celebrate the old rite if the bishop allowed it. Pope Benedict came in and said, it was once sacred for the church, it's always sacred. You're a priest when you're ordained in the Roman rite. That is that's the older iteration of the Roman rite, and just by the virtue of being a priest of the Roman rite, you can celebrate it. You don't need permission, right? However, and while I think that there was nothing wrong, during that era. I do think that there was a small minority of the trad communities that were emboldened, and also YouTube gave them outlets to be able to make an anti-Vatican II mindset prevalent. They were able to drive that home, be like, see, this Vatican II thing was a mistake, and they put out all this content, and they also contributed to the divisions that I think led to bishops being like, this is ridiculous. Like, but again, I think it was perception versus reality. I think there was actually, I'm more in agreement with like other people who call it like the peace of Benedict. Like Pope Benedict totally, like there was no like animosity like going on, and if there was, it was totally one direction. It was the Novus Ordoists like against the TLMers. Like it was never like TLMers trying to kick Novus Ordos out of their parishes. That didn't happen. It was the other way around. But Pope Francis goes in the opposite direction. We're like, no. A priest doesn't have the authority to do that, and neither does a bishop. They have to appeal to Rome, and Rome makes the decision. Yeah. You're like, whoa, like even down to like when you can publish the times in the bulletin. Okay, so what I think, who the heck am I, would be helpful is if the authority was put to decide, was just put back into the hand of the local bishop. But I also think,
or the parish priest.
But I also think that the people celebrating the traditional Latin Mass, would have to get in line with the new calendar.
Okay,
and maybe even electionary.
That's interesting you brought that up, because I often sometimes think about that. We always talk about the fourth edition of the Roman Missal, right? Yeah. That a lot of the Tridentine, some of the things that we lost from the Tridentine into the Novus Ordo, maybe we restore some things, right? Like, for example, one example would be the offertory prayers, right? Bring the medieval offertory prayers, bring them back in, little things like that, I think is helpful. But lately I was thinking about that too, and I wonder how difficult that would be. So we're in a situation in the church where you have to find continuity between these last three papacies, JP2, Indults, Benedict, Summorum Pontificum, and then Traditionis Custodes.
Yeah.
And I think Francis he relegated the Tridentine Mass to the societies.
Yeah.
But the parishes, it's Novus Ordo.
Yeah.
I think there's a way through that says, no, the Tridentine can be celebrated at the parish if it's in line with the calendar.
Yeah.
So if the calendars align and you're celebrating the same feasts and you're reading the same readings, see, that's the change. So I don't know, I haven't thought through how difficult that would be in a parish setting, or for the Tridentine. It'd have to be something official. The Tridentine, you'd have to add readings, and you'd have to bring it in line with the calendar, which a lot of traditional Tridentine goers wouldn't get up with.
Right.
But it would be a way forward to say, no, parishes can have it, but it must align with what that parish is celebrating. Because it is, at the end of the day, it's not a separate sui juris right. It's exactly. The Roman rite.
Exactly.
And so to kind of get around Francis saying, it caused disunity. Well, no, there's no disunity. We have the same readings, we have the same calendar. Right? It's just the extraordinary form.
Yes.
So you're marrying kind of, we're talking, in La La Land here, and we have no authority. But it almost, that in a way almost marries the three papacies. Now, of course, Tridentine goers will just give me the Tridentine.
Well, then go to the societies. That's what they exist for, to perpetuate the old calendar, to perpetuate that stuff. But
that would be the Francis answer.
Yeah.
But Leo, maybe the gracious answer to stop the persecution would be and the ghettoization of it.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Would be to the parish can, but we have to make the Tridentine align in those instances. Reading.
Yeah, because actually, I think
I'm not even saying that's the best. I'm just saying we're just.
But I do think that is the actual division. Is the different calendar.
Well, and we know that firsthand. We know that firsthand from our parish priest, who, a lot of parishes say that's the struggle, is that you only have one parish priest. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of priests, and that parish priest is doing almost double duty. Yeah. He's having to align himself with the calendar, the Tridentine calendar, and the Tridentine readings, coming up with sermons every week for that, and then every day for that. Yeah. And then also Novus Ordo calendar and readings. It is actually a burden on the priest.
Yeah. Like he's so much happier actually. Like he loves the Trinity Mass, but he is actually so much happier that there's just one calendar now between the two masses. Like he does the Latin Novus Ordo in the morning, and then he does the English one. And he's actually it is a lot easier on the priest to be able to be like, well, look, the sermon I gave this morning, I can give the same one now for the English mass.
But not even just like saying the priest can be lazy. It's saying his flock. It's his flock.
Yeah.
And he's able to speak to them
as one community.
In communion, as one community. And so in parishes where you had a mix, like if you had a parish that was just Tridentine, well, that's a little different. But in our instance, again, anecdotally, we had both going on. We had a Tridentine parish, and then we had a Novus Ordo parish, but all in one parish.
Yeah.
So.
But we just talked about this in our first 500 Years series with the Quartodecimans.
Did we? Oh, yeah.
Like, that's the point. Like, here's the Roman bishop, and he's got, like, all these different communities in Rome, and there's Asiatic communities, and they're celebrating Easter. Like, they're stopping the fast on a different day than the other Roman Christians. He's like, no, like, you're all going to do what we do. And then the Asiatics were like, well, we received this from John and from the great luminaries of Asia. And it was like, well, look, at the end of the day, we got to come to an agreement because we can't be celebrating these things on all these different like times.
Yeah, so it's not outside the tradition to do, what we're saying.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But is that anything?
Montanism is the next one.
Yeah. So we'll wrap up this conversation then. So I hope you guys, enjoyed this conversation.
Enjoyed the cigars.
Really enjoyed the cigars. Don't forget to pre-order those for August.
I feel smarter after smoking this cigar.
Definitely, yeah. But yeah, I know that we're not that podcast that comes out with an episode every day and just puts out like quantity. We want to make sure that when we put something out, it's quality. Now, also, yes, of course, we have like day jobs and all these and families and all these things that don't allow us to always be together to do our episodes. But at the same time, part of the reason why we have these gaps is because we really are we want to make sure that we're putting out the best that we can, so that you guys really do have something that you can learn from and benefit from and even keep returning to. Yeah. I find myself sometimes like going back and like, well, what did we talk about in that episode? And I go back and listen to it. Like, and I'm like, oh yeah. That
like we said, God is still creating every moment. like the academy never rests.
Yeah.
And so when we want to be able to present, really graduate level stuff, but just in an everyday kind of style, right? Well, the academy is always moving, and it takes a lot of time to relook at, okay, who are the recent scholars? What have they recently said? Butt it up against past scholars, that kind of thing. So there's a lot that goes into it, but we want to make sure there's quality for you guys.
But we're very close. So our next episode is going to be on the Montanists, the Montanist movement. We're gonna probably stick to, again, the 2nd century. We might creep a little bit into the early 3rd century just because that's when we have a lot more of the sources. But we're gonna probably start with the beginning of Montanus' ministry, and then maybe end with the debate in Rome between Gaius and Proclus. We think that's like a nice bookend, and we'll talk about anything that we actually know in between there and what the implications are for the church. But I think it was a good next topic to go to, because we just pivoted off of the Asiatic Christians, and the Montanists are Asiatic Christians. So I'm excited about that episode.
Yeah. When's your article come out?
The article on icons. So it's part of a book, and everybody that's contributing to that book is a little bit late. So I don't know what the current timeline is, but maybe by the end of this year it'll come out. But it's really, really great. People like Swan is in it. I think he's writing 2 articles for it. I'm writing more. He's writing more from like, let's look at Nicaea 2 and what it's actually saying, and arguing against Gavin Ortlund. Mine, I don't mention Gavin Ortlund, but you can probably see it, just how I'm arguing that he's kind of lingering in the background, some of the things, but are in our video. But I'm more from like the historical theology piece. Like, is this a natural development, or is it, like he claims, an illegitimate accretion? That's the question of my article. So yeah, that'll be coming out. Also, you know what? Maybe I'll plug it in the episode with Montanism too, but I also do. So I have a book on Montanism, specifically restricted to the Church of North Africa and the whole thing that happened with Tertullian. So it's about the rise and fall of the Montanist movement in North Africa, in Carthage, as a precursor to the rise of the Episcopate of St. Cyprian.
Available on Amazon.
Of Carthage. So it's up there on the shelf there. It's called Prophets and Councils.
Can the camera get that?
Yeah, I think so. Prophets and Councils, Montanism, and the Church of Carthage. So I think actually after we do our Montanism episode, that's a really great book to
We can review.
to read.
Maybe we just review it too.
Yeah, that's a great book to read as a follow-up to the Montanism episode. But anyways, so we'll be coming out with that, and I hope that you guys all enjoyed this episode, and we will see you
Cheers.
soon. Cheers.